Hello, my name is Steve White. I'm a filmmaker and dragonfly obsessive. This is the story of my time at Chartley Moss, filming white-faced darter dragonflies in the summer of 2019. I've already shown some of this footage at the BDS AGM in 2019. That was a work in progress, and I was asked if I'd like to show the finished film this year. Unfortunately, I don't have a finished film yet, so I came up with a plan B, um, which I thought might be worthwhile going back through my written notes and my audio notes and presenting this in the form of a diary, an illustrated diary of what was a magical month or so in my life, in the exclusive, almost exclusive company of dragonflies. My original plan, this would be something like a live book reading with video illustrations. Obviously, it's not possible to do that in person, so I've done a sort of as live narration, hopefully in much better sound quality than this introduction. And I think this could be the birth of a new genre of video audiobook. So anyway, without further ado, I'd like to take you back to the summer of 2019. Thank you.
Prologue. I've been filming dragonflies in an amateur capacity a fair bit over the last few years, and each year trying to do so in a more concerted way, focusing on a different species each time. Most of my professional time is spent as an editor of natural history films. Long months spent in dark rooms, vicariously experiencing the wonders of nature through the exploits of others. By the end of 2018, I'd been largely broken by working on a dismal and vainglorious BBC project, so I vowed that for most of the following summer I would dedicate myself entirely to filming dragonflies, unsullied by any commercial motivation or pressure. With advice from the good people at the British Dragonfly Society, I decided to focus on white-faced darters as a rare and rarely filmed species. With generous support and some essential health and safety training from Paul Shires of Natural England, I was granted access to Chartley Moss, a floating bog and home to the UK's most southerly population of white-faced darters. It's a very unique place, a floating raft of sphagnum moss and peat sitting atop a basin of water where the underlying rock formation has collapsed to leave a cavernous void. The lack of any solid ground makes it a hazardous place for humans, just one of the reasons that a permit is required to venture onto the site. But openings in the peat and the acidic water make it an ideal habitat for several species of dragonflies. In this diary, collated from written and audio notes, I've tried to include observations that have at least anecdotal scientific merit. I will also be referencing the dismal weather of the summer of 2019 as my primary excuse that this is a record of events and still not yet a genre-defining nature documentary. Tuesday, 7th of May 2019. My first day at Chartley Moss. I arrive around 9 AM, park my car full of 10 tons of kit by the gate and make my way along the disused railway track, through the woods and then tentatively onto the bog itself. It's about 2 months since I did my health and safety training, and I'm extremely wary of every squelchy footstep. It's one of the strangest landscapes I've ever encountered. The stumps of dead trees telling their own story of a slow battle fought and lost. I move slowly forward with a heightened sense of there being nothing solid beneath my feet. I'm laden down with kit, half a man of extra weight. My tripod I carry like a baby in my arms. I figure if I were to plunge through the surface, I would be able to use its horizontally extended legs to save myself. Although I guess the reality probably wouldn't be the slow sinking of an imagination fueled by watching 1970s Tarzan on TV, with its comeuppance delivering jungle quicksand. I'm heading to Shooter's Pool, an opening at the centre of the moss, 10 metres or so in diameter. There is a path of sorts, a safe route across. But I'm acutely aware of the no-go zones flagged to me in my induction. I am excited and terrified in equal measure, but I figure a bit of over-caution is no bad thing. A JCB and even an aeroplane have been known to sink through the surface, never to be seen again. I passed the magnificently named Dead Pine Gulch, a tourist attraction in Victorian times, famed for an island of moss that would rise and sink from view. When I make it to the pool, I am mightily relieved. A couple of wooden duckboards at its edge, 5 feet long and a foot wide, provide a life raft and will become the centre of my world for most of my time to come here. Shooter's Pool is the smaller of the two pools at the centre of the moss, but it's more accessible than its neighbour Europa, and when trying to film inch-long insects in close-up, a bigger pool offers me no appreciable benefit. I lay out my kit with the beginnings of a method and celebrate my arrival with a cup of tea. At this point, I've only ever seen white-faced darters on one occasion, the previous July at Wixall Moss in Cheshire. A few flying adults right at the end of their season. Although that trip was perhaps more memorable for an encounter with an entirely naked rambler. How he coped with the voracious horseflies remains a mystery to me. I'd based my arrival here on field guide predictions for the flight season, but I had no local info at this point, and I'd never seen a larva, though I knew they were daytime emergers. I was relieved to see that at least I didn't appear to have missed anything, as I couldn't see exuviae, the empty larval skins, of any species as I scanned the vegetation. I took a very nervy recce around the pool now I was unencumbered by equipment. But on returning to the safety of the duckboard, and as my eyes tuned in to the detail of the cotton grass stems, I saw something new. 2 small translucent yellowish dragonflies, freshly emerged and hanging out to dry, their wings inflated but not yet open. I couldn't be sure of the species, but given where I was and why I'd come here, it was a fairly safe bet that these were the white-faced darters I was looking for. I scrambled to get my kit together. I'd been in intensive training, drilling myself in rapid camera assembly. But still, I was fumble-fingered. It was a good job for me that these dragonflies were going nowhere quickly. When I finally pressed record, I breathed a sigh of immense relief. Even if nothing else were to follow, I would at least have something to show for all the lengthy preparations of the preceding weeks. But then a change in the weather would dampen all of our enthusiasm. The sun departed behind a cloud bank, and this being still early May, the temperature dropped abruptly. I filmed on until 6 p.m, hoping for a takeoff, but it never happened. In fact, both dragonflies got as far as opening their wings, only to close them behind their bodies, something I wasn't aware they could do. The next 2 days, the weather was foul. When I came for a final look on the Thursday, the same 2 dragonflies were still hanging forlornly. At least that showed they weren't readily predated here. They seemed in relatively good condition considering. I'd like to think they survived their ordeal and eventually made it to the air. It's been a long journey for any dragonfly to get to the stage of life where it finally has wings. It always seems very cruel luck for those that come so far only to be denied by weather-related damage. Like acquiring a sports car only to arrive at a perpetually red traffic light. Wednesday, 8th of May. Dreadful weather has its own benefits. I made use of a dismal day by visiting the Natural England HQ at Aqualate Mere at the invitation of Paul Shires. He had treasure for me in the form of 2 boxes, the archive records of Tim Bainan, voluntary warden at the Moss for over a decade and a meticulous record keeper. I cannot describe in a succinct way what an inspiration Tim has been for me. Over the coming weeks, I would read and reread his scientific papers over and over again, each time gaining further insight as my own observations and understanding grew. Browsing through his material, I felt shame at my own lackadaisical approach to recording observations. It's easy to rely on the camera to do all the work, adept as it is at recording times and dates. But unprocessed data has no value. Reading Tim's diaries, I resolved to be more thorough with my own written and audio notes. Monday, 13th of May. I'm back at the Moss for a full week of filming. After last week's soggy introduction, this is it. Mission on. I'm a bit more confident on the bog now. The rigid fear of last week has left me, replaced with a common sense caution. As I approached the pool around midday, I saw the angelic sunlit flutter of a teneral white-faced darter making its maiden flight. I set up to film 2 more make their own departures, and then frame up on another that had just gone to the upside-down hanging stage, taking off himself around an hour later. I tried filming a larva in a small homemade glass tank. I was very wary not to traumatise it. The peat gives the water a thick red colour, and this one was less than impressed by the crystal clear rainwater I brought with me. Their underwater life must be a mostly very dark one. Sunshine was a surprise to both of us. In all the activity, I have neglected to look after my nose, which is already glowing red. Thursday, 16th of May. Today, I am 50 years old, and I'm feeling very privileged to be spending the day in such a remarkable place, with only a friendly pheasant and the dragonflies for company. 2 days previously, I was joined briefly by 2 heavy-footed photographers out to bag a rarity. I was alarmed at how much the surface moves with people walking around, but also by their apparent lack of concern about their impact on the habitat. Each ponderous welly step permanently remodelling the edge of the pond. I see this almost everywhere I go. I'm not oblivious to my own impact on the places I film, and yes, sometimes I will edge an extra inch to get a shot. But when I see it done so thoughtlessly, it saddens and angers me. Generally, the bravest I get is to mutter a few barbed comments under my breath, but given my low volume and the often senior demographic of the offenders, I think that falls mostly on deaf ears. Once at Ham Wall in Somerset, someone asked me if it was all right to break off an old dead reed stem so we could get a better view. That one time, I did manage to be forthright in explaining that the old dead reed stems were the reason why the dragonflies were there. Anyway, I've been getting lots of good action of emergencies. I was alarmed to read in one of Tim Bainon's papers that this hatching can start as early as 7 in the morning. But after a couple of attempts to rise early, I've knocked that on the head. One of the things that first attracted me to dragonflies was that they appeared to keep civilised hours in nice weather. Yet my 2 previous filming projects have had me up all night and then out at dawn. When I finish filming at the end of the day, I still have several hours of work to do, offloading footage and preparing for the next day, and my candle cannot burn at both ends for long. Yesterday, I took advantage of low winds to do some drone filming. This proved not entirely popular with another visiting photographer. In this case, it was definitely me on his patch, as he comes here regularly. But we talked for a while, and I hope I persuaded him that my intentions were good. He was certainly generous in sharing his site-specific wisdom. Monday the 20th of May. I've come back to Chartley Moss for the beginning of my 3rd week here. I arrived at Shooter's Pool at around 11 a.m. to find things in full swing, with takeoffs happening regularly. There's a lot of adults coming back to the pool now, which I assumed were probably all males, but then I saw a little tussle and then a mating pair, which is interesting, as the literature suggested there may be a bigger gap between emergence and sexual maturity. I didn't have the chance to film them properly before they flew off into the undergrowth. But it does mean so long as the sun's out this week, there could be a lot of adult action on the way. There's a good number of males patrolling around the cotton grass now, displaying their mature coloration, scarlet and blue-black, with the eponymous white face. So time to start attempting to film flying dragonflies, which I know is going to take a lot of practice if I'm to get some good shots. Anyway, delighted to be back here. It's sunny at the moment, but the weather forecast is a bit patchy for the week ahead. There are some big, bulbous clouds in the sky, but no direct rain forecast to hit today, so hopefully it will stay fair. It's Tuesday 21st of May, and it's 4:45 p.m. It's been a bit of an epic day, mostly sunny if quite breezy. I came here this morning, was on site just before 9 and couldn't see any action going on. So I picked off some wide shots while I remembered to do that, and then I came to the side of the pond. But before I'd had my traditional start of day cup of tea, I noticed a larva in the grass, just on the edge of the sphagnum, heading back towards the pool. So I quickly burst open my camera bag. Conscious the moment was slipping away, I had to sacrifice dryness and lie down to film him handheld on a macro lens. When he got into the sphagnum moss on the edge of the pool, I calmed myself and set the cameras up properly. I thought I'd lost him. I thought I was filming just an empty case, just an empty exuvia for a while. Then off he went again, checking out one blade of cotton grass and then another, which he clambered up and started emerging from. It was fantastic. I set up both cameras on him. This was exactly what I'd been trying to get. A larva pre-emergence, so I had the whole process covered. Buoyed by that success, I thought I should do some practice filming adults, as there were a few flying around. And, as I was doing that, I saw first a mating pair, and then a female egg-laying, which apart from being the first time I've ever seen it, is also the first time it's happened to my knowledge this year, much earlier than I was expecting. So, from thinking I need to come back in June to get the whole life cycle, it all seems to be happening in front of me, right now. I managed to get a couple of fairly decent flying shots, I hope. I'll see what they look like when I get home. So all in all, a very busy and productive day, with great successes and some failures. But that's what I'm here to do. Not fail, obviously, but that's inevitable at times, and I'll learn from my mistakes, hopefully. Wednesday, 22nd of May. It's all about the adults now, so I've been able to rationalise my kit a bit, sparing myself from some of the weighty burden I carry on and off the bog each day, my least favourite part of this whole adventure. I got one mating pair and some nice portraits. The males like to perch on the horizontal bits of broken cotton grass. I didn't quite have the serendipitous luck of yesterday, but I did a lot of practice and learnt a few things, both about white-faced darters and filming small flying insects that move very fast. The good thing with the coupling is you always hear it from the flutter of wings. Two dragonflies together make quite a bit of noise, so that's what I shall be listening out for intently tomorrow. I saw a bit of egg laying too, out on a particular patch, so I'll stake that out for a while too. The females are distinct from the males, blue-black with yellow splodges instead of red, more similar to the immature tenorals. I saw one lay her eggs and then fly vertically up in the air, which I've not noticed before, but I have read about. I think it's their way of saying, I'm done, I'm out of here, and avoiding the amorous traffic down below. A walking party came by with Paul Shires from Natural England about 2:30. I found I was able to talk almost with authority about white-faced darters. A lady asked me their Latin name, and although I could visualise it, having read it many times, I realised I couldn't say it out loud, although I do believe it's Leucarinia dubia. We'll see if that's right or not. Anyway, getting there. Friday, 24th of May. My last day for a while today, so I decided to keep my eyes peeled on a particular spot this morning, as probably my last chance to film any emergence. I've got a few of them coming up very close to the bank, mostly obscured by the grass. One taken by a spider, and another seemingly killed by a single bite from an ant. I also filmed another one taking dramatic evasive action from an ant, so they're clearly pre-programmed to recognise the threat, and very vulnerable before their exoskeletons harden. I learnt a lot yesterday afternoon about the behaviour just watching the adults, once I stopped trying to film them quite so much, just watch what was happening. I can see now how the males wait by the water, patrolling and perching. They're not overly aggressive to each other, but there's a lot of signalling their presence with wing fluttering. Males and females couple up mid-air and then fly off into the heather, away from the pond, where they may or may not choose to stay together. I did then see pairs returning, and as I'd read described in the literature, the male attends the female at a polite distance while she oviposits. Not always though. Sometimes she does it alone. The females lay their eggs in little batches on the wing, dropping them into the moss just below the surface, much like a broad-bodied chaser does. It's lovely to watch, and mercifully just about slow enough to be able to follow and film. 22nd of June 2019, 10 past 1 on a Saturday afternoon. It's been a very fine morning, fine weather-wise, fine dragonfly-wise. It's beginning to cloud over now, which has been better than forecast, and certainly better than any day in a long time. So much dragonfly activity. I think I've got some good shots, but the thing I'm having a problem with is getting the bit where they couple up. As far as I know, the male grabs the female. I've been hearing and seeing it for days now, but I don't really understand where the female comes from, as you hear the sound just after it's happened every time, and then see them fly off. I'm just not aware of the females flying in. I've tried to sit and look the other way towards the woodland, but that doesn't work for very long, as I can't help getting distracted by something back at the pond again. I hope I've got it on a couple of wide shots at least, but it's very, very hard to work out what's really going on, although it's obviously happening a lot, so it's quite frustrating in that way. Still, the dragonflies themselves have been amazing today, the white-faced darters, and there's a visiting banded demoiselle flying in front of me right now. 4-spotted chasers and emperors are here in abundance. The sun's just coming out again, so that's break time over. With that solar switch, everything turns on again. Tuesday, 2nd of July. Just coming up to midday, and despite the weather forecast, it's very cloudy, overcast, so not much going on. So I'm just sat here in the gloom. Occasionally single females come along to oviposit, so they're clearly carrying on, even though the males aren't here and they're not actively making pairs at the moment. The females are obviously taking their time and enjoying the peace and quiet. I haven't seen any emerging today, and nor would I probably expect to on the 2nd of July. I'm already thinking I need to come back next year to get the shots I'm not going to get this year. Because despite some reasonable weather in the middle of May, it's been just dismal all the way through June. And despite one super hot day last Saturday, temperatures haven't been that high, and there's certainly not been a lot of sunshine. Wednesday, 3rd of July. It's a sunny day at Chartley Moss. This is probably my last official day here, and despite some occasional clouds, it's been tremendous. If every day had been like this, who knows what I would have got. I used the drone this morning to do some shots close to the pond, and then a later session where I wanted to get a wide shot of all the cloud reflections in the water. I had an interesting time, being a bit more experimental. I did see an emperor dragonfly take what I presume was a white-faced darter. It might have been a 4-spotted chaser. Take it off to a tree, presumably to eat it. Most of the time, they don't get too involved with each other. I guess it gets to a point where he needs a snack, and there's plenty of snacks around. It must happen fairly rarely though, because the white-faced darters don't seem particularly wary of the emperors. It's Tuesday, July 23rd, and I'm back at Chartley Moss for one last day of the season, I think. If it is the end of the white-faced darter season, then at least I have some form of closure, and I can stop looking at the weather forecast and wondering when I can get up here to film. I'm noticing a bit of a shift change in the species here. This morning there's been a lot of what I think are probably black darters, lots of emperors and some faded 4-spotted chasers. But now, whereas the emperors have been dominant, there seems to be what could be black-tailed skimmers coming in, and another big hawker, which is probably a southern hawker. I'll see if I can get a picture of it, but they're moving so fast. It's really hot today. It's the hottest day of the year, I think, and nothing stays still very long. I'll just enjoy this last couple of hours, see if I can get something special. If not, it's been a very special time anyway. Epilogue. As I write now in the autumn of 2021, that July day remains the last time I visited Chartley Moss. Such an amazing place, and I learnt so much, both in terms of dragonfly behaviour and filming technique. From the moment I left, I dreamt of returning to film more, but circumstances so far have made that impossible. I have, though, made good use of my own time, begging and borrowing ever better equipment, and spending an instructive summer working alongside probably the world's best insect cameraman on a wonderful wild bee film, Sorry Dragonflies. I really miss being there, and I yearn to go back. But I'm happy to know that the moss won't have missed me at all. It was just one summer of its many thousands.